So in your opinion, what we have to do to allow this this instance that is reside in the private subnet, right, to communicate with the outside? Imagine you, I always give a real time example to understand that. We come back to the example that I give you about the router that is in your home, right? You have only private IP address, and this private IP address you cannot communicate with them to the outside, because if any host in your home have a public IP address, we will run out of the IP address. APV version 4, right? But in the AP version 6, we have a billion of IP address, right? That is why they create IPv version 6, IP version 6, right? But here in our example, we are using IP version 4. And the most of hosts using the IP version 4, right? You have only private IP address. So how should look to this word that I will mention now. How should I translate my private IP address to a public IP address? So can I access to the internet? So to translate your private IP address to a public IP address, we use what we call the NAT, the network address translation, that we will create right in our public subnet, right? Then go to the private row tables where our private subnet reside, and we will add routes to that table. So anything we will want to communicate with the outside, we will say to our row tables, please route that traffic to the NAT that reside in the public subnet. Then, as long as the subnets that reside in the public route tables are able to communicate with outside, then our NAT can send the traffic to outside and retrieve that response or that things that our private instance that reside in the private subnet is looking for. So now what are we going to do? We are going to our VPC management console and create a NAT in our public subnet and attach it, or and then configure our route tables in the private route tables, so we can allow our EC2 instance to know which routes that they have to take to go to outside of the private subnet. So we will go to my VPC right console. Then here I will go to the NAT gateway, right? Then I will create a NAT gateway, right? Then call it my NAT gateway. Then select the subnet. Which subnet I want this NAT to reside in? It's in the public subnet, right? And I don't want to allocate. I have to allocate an IP address, right? I have allocate an IP address to it. Then create a NAT gateway, right? And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to back to my route tables, then go to my private route table where all my private subnets are reside. Then go to my private route table, right? Then go to routes, edit route routes or routes, add route. Then here, when I want to go to the outside, when the destination be the outside or the network or the internet, try to go to the NAT gateway, right? And this NAT gateway will take me to the outside. So now, if I try to come back to my Ansible server, right? And this is the the IP address of my Ansible server right here. And we'll see now if it is able to communicate with the outside. We try to ping www.google.com. The pings work, right? And now if I try to sudo yum update, yes, I am able now to do that because my private EC2 instance is able to go to the outside. But the outside cannot be able to communicate with my EC2 instance. The outside cannot be able to send traffic to my EC2 instance because they reside in the private subnet. They are not published to the outside. They are accessible only from the VPC. So that is the difference between a private subnet and the public subnet. When we have instance inside the public subnet, so this EC2 instance have a public address. So it can be accessible, it can be pinged from the outside. But for the instance that reside in the private subnet, they can be accessible only from within the same subnet or from within the same VPC. Right. And next step now, I will try to install Ansible, use the pipe, the package manager for Python. So here I will type sudo pip install Ansible, right? The pipe package does not exist, so we have to install it at first, then install Ansible. So to install the pipe package manager, I have to type command yum install python dash pip pipe or pip dash yes. Then it will be installed. Now we are able to install Ansible. The patch is very good. It's look bright. But why I preferred Moboxterm? Because in Moboxterm you can open many sessions. But as long as I go only with the free tier or only with free Moboxterm, I have limited sessions, maybe 10. I cannot remember very well. But the Putty, when you are dealing only with one instance, it is better than Moboxterm, right? Because it have a clean terminal. But in Putty there are two buttons here and much stuff here. So the Moboxterm is useful when you are dealing with many instances or with many sessions. But for Putty, when you deal only with one instance, it's better than the Moboxterm. Like you are using CMD or in Windows or terminal in Linux. So in this lab, I want to walk you through many stuffs that you have to know as a DevOps beginner. You must have some knowledge in Linux, then in AWS, then in Ansible, and then in Jenkins, right?